Okay, so let's unpack this. Usually, when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this really comforting expectation of precision.
Right. It's very clear cut.
Yeah, it feels almost like engineering. I mean, you
Yeah.
fall off your bike, your arm swells up, you go to the hospital, and the x-ray just shows a very clear, jagged white line.
Yes.
And the doctor just points at the screen and says, there it is. That's the problem.
And that binary nature of physical medicine is, well, it's incredibly reassuring.
Oh,
I
totally.
mean, it's broken or it's not broken. The virus is present or it isn't.
Right.
We really crave that kind of categorization because it takes the absolute chaos of human existence and just, puts it into neat, manageable little boxes.
But then you step into the world of human psychology and specifically the realms of neurodevelopment and like childhood trauma.
Which is incredibly messy.
Exactly. And suddenly that pristine x-ray machine is just completely useless. The landscape is murky, it's contradictory, and honestly, it's deeply uncomfortable.
It really is.
So today, for you listening, we are diving into a stack of research that I can only describe as like the ultimate manual for human behavior.
It's a fascinating deep dive.
Yeah. And in preparing for this, you might think of books like Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature, which, if we're being completely honest, can sometimes read like a step-by-step guide on how to be a highly effective psychopath.
I mean, Green's work is brilliant at mapping the terrain of adult manipulation
Right.
and defense mechanisms,
Yeah.
but it's very observational.
Yeah, it tells you what to look out for.
Exactly. It tells you what people do and how to navigate it.
Mm.
But the material we are looking at today goes, well, underneath the floorboards.
Right. So we aren't just observing toxic behaviors today. We're actually excavating the origins. Like we're going all the way down to the bedrock.
Yeah.
We are looking at the really dense, incredibly profound psychoanalytic framework laid out by Sam Vaknin. We're exploring exactly how our parents, wire our brains from the absolute moment we take our first breath.
And Vaknin's synthesis of all this psychoanalytic theory, it provides a roadmap for how the human personality is actually constructed.
Yeah.
And I think the most illuminating part of this framework is the specific division of labor between our caregivers.
The mom and the dad.
Exactly. We're going to examine how the maternal figure pours the psychological foundation of the mind, and then how the paternal figure is tasked with building the actual house on top of it.
So our mission for you on this deep dive is to completely demystify all these psychological buzzwords you see thrown around constantly online. I mean, we're talking about mommy issues, daddy issues, and the creation of a narcissist.
Right, those terms get tossed around so much.
Way too much. So we want to take these heavy academic psychoanalytic concepts and explain them so intuitively, so simply, that a child could understand them.
Which is very fitting.
Yeah, because everything we're talking about today is fundamentally about what happens to us when we are children.
I mean, it requires us to look at a period of life where the human being has absolutely no defenses.
None at all.
No historical context, no cognitive ability to rationalize, and frankly, no choice but to absorb the emotional state of the people, keeping them alive.
Okay, so let's start at day zero, like the absolute beginning. The blueprint of childhood stretching from birth to roughly, 36 months?
Yes, those first 3 years. And those are entirely dominated by the mother.
Okay.
No, before we go any further, we really have to strip away our modern literal definitions here.
Right, this is important.
In psychoanalytic terms, mother is not a biological mandate. It does not strictly mean a biological female.
Okay.
Nor does it necessarily mean the woman whose body gestated the child.
It's a job title, basically.
It is entirely the function of primary caregiving. The mother is whoever fulfills that all-encompassing primary maternal role in the infant's life.
So it could be anyone, really.
It could be an adoptive father, a grandmother, a really dedicated nanny, or even an older sister.
But for our discussion, we're just going to use the word mother.
Exactly. We will refer to this primary caregiver as the mother. And her singular, most vital psychological job in those first 3 years is to help the infant separate.
Okay, let's really visualize this because I feel like this concept is the absolute key to everything else we're going to talk about today.
It really is.
When you are born, you do not possess an ego. Like you have no concept of I.
None.
So think of the infant and the mother as a single, tightly packed, completely fused ball of clay. You just don't know where your tiny infant body ends and your mother's body begins.
Right, and the psychological term for that is symbiosis.
Symbiosis.
The infant literally shares the mother's nervous system. So if the mother's heart rate spikes with
The
anxiety,
infant panics, too.
exactly, the infant feels that panic as their own.
Hmm.
Or if the mother is, say, deeply depressed and lethargic, the infant experiences the entire world as heavy and unresponsive.
Because there's no boundary between them.
There is absolutely no boundary.
So the mother's job over those first 3 years is to take that single, dense ball of clay and, like, gently, slowly, meticulously pull it apart into two separate balls.
Yes.
She has to communicate to the baby day in and day out, I am over here and you are over there. You are a separate entity and you're safe being separate.
And that analogy perfectly captures the sort of mechanical delicacy of psychological development.
It's fragile.
Extremely. Pulling wet clay apart requires a very specific, consistent, and gentle tension.
Right.
Because if the mother gets tired and just, lets go too fast, the clay drops, hits the floor, and splatters.
Oh.
The child feels completely abandoned. But on the other hand, if she is anxious and grips the clay too tightly, refusing to let it stretch out.
It never separates at all.
Exactly. It never separates. The child remains engulfed. And this actually brings us to a devastating but super crucial concept introduced by the French psychoanalyst André Green in 1978.
Okay.
It's the concept of the dead mother.
And we really should clarify right away, André Green wasn't talking about a mother who literally passed away.
No. He was describing a mother who is psychologically dead to the child.
Emotionally dead.
Right. She is emotionally absent. She might be physically present in the room. I mean, she might be the one mixing the formula, changing the diapers, buckling the car seat.
Yeah.
But emotionally, the lights are completely off.
So she's basically going through all the mechanical motions of parenting, but there's just no soul in it.
Precisely. She might be suffering from severe clinical depression, for instance. Or she might be a narcissist herself, using the child merely as a prop to look like a good parent to the outside world.
Wow.
Or she might be actively abusive, offering love only conditionally, like when the child is perfectly quiet and compliant.
So whatever the cause is, her emotional unavailability basically renders her dead in the eyes of this developing infant.
Yes.
So going back to our ball of clay analogy, if the mother is psychologically dead, she isn't applying that gentle, consistent tension to pull the clay apart.
No, she's not.
She just leaves it sitting on the table.
Right.
That single fused ball of clay just sits there, slowly hardening into one weird conjoined lump.
And because of that, the child never successfully completes the separation-individuation phase. They do not develop an ego.
They don't have self.
Exactly. They never form a true, autonomous self because there was no safe, responsive partner to separate from.
So what does a child do when they are, 2 years old and realize they don't actually exist as an individual?
Well, they do what any organism does when faced with annihilation. They adapt to survive.
Okay.
Because the reality of being unloved, unseparated, and entirely void of a self is it's too terrifying for a toddler's brain to process.
Of course.
So they invent a self. They construct what psychoanalysts call the false self.
It's kind of like putting on a suit of armor because you realize you don't have any skin.
That is a brilliant way to put it. Yes,
Yeah.
a perfect, invulnerable, grandiose mask.
Oh, wow.
The false self is designed to interact with the dangerous, unloving world while protecting the fragile, unformed nothingness inside.
Right.
And this dynamic, the failure to separate from a dead mother, which leads to the creation of a false self, this is the absolute breeding ground for pathological narcissism.
So a narcissist is quite literally an adult walking around with the psychological architecture of an unseparated infant.
Yes, they are trapped in a permanent state of arrested development.
Okay, so if the mother's job is to pour the foundation of the house, and a dead mother means that foundation is just a cracked, empty hole in the ground,
Right.
where is the father during all of this? Because I can hear the cynics listening right now asking if dad just gets a free pass to go golfing for the first 3 years, while mom carries the entire burden of creating human consciousness.
Oh, it's a very vital question.
Yeah.
I mean, the father is, of course, present,
Right.
and his emotional support of the mother during those first 3 years indirectly impacts the child immensely. If he's supportive, she can be more present.
Makes sense.
But in terms of the child's direct internal psychological structuring, the father's primary role steps into the spotlight a bit later, typically around age 3 to 5. Okay, in psychoanalytic literature, the father is defined as the socialization agent.
The socialization agent. Okay, I need you to break that down, because if the mother is the foundation, what exactly is the father doing here?
Well, if the mother pours the concrete foundation, ensuring the ground is stable, the father is the building inspector. He's the framer.
Okay.
And eventually, he is the tour guide who takes the child by the hand, walks them out the front door, and introduces them to the neighborhood.
He's the bridge to the outside world.
Exactly. The father introduces the concept of society. He brings the rules, the boundaries, the cultural scripts, expectations of behavior, and gender roles.
So he's showing them how things work out there.
Yes. And most importantly, a healthy father teaches the child how to regulate their inevitable anxiety when they interact with the massive, unpredictable world outside the maternal cocoon.
So the mother's job is completely internal. She teaches you who you are. And the father's job is external. He teaches you where you fit in the world.
That's a beautiful way to summarize it. But consider what happens when we introduce a dead father to this equation.
Right, like a father who is physically absent. Or maybe, a massive workaholic who comes home at 9 p.m. and just stares at his phone all night.
Yes.
Or a father who is deeply emotionally remote or even psychopathic.
When the father fails to act as that bridge, the child is left stranded on the front porch.
Wow.
The socialization process fails entirely. The child never learns how to effectively interact with reality.
Because nobody showed them how.
Right. They don't learn how to decode social cues, how to handle rejection, or how to assert themselves properly.
Because the tour guide never showed up to explain how the crosswalks work, so they're just terrified of the traffic.
And this results in a massive deficit in what psychologists call self-efficacy.
Which is what?
It's the internal belief
Right.
that you are capable of successfully navigating challenges and, influencing your own environment. So a child with a dead father grows into an adult who is plagued by severe anxiety, social ineptitude, and a deep-seated fear of the world.
Okay, let me just make sure I have this timeline perfectly clear for everyone listening.
Go ahead.
If the mother fails in the first 3 years, the clay never separates, and you get narcissism, a person with a false self.
Yes.
If the mother succeeds but the father fails in years 3 through 5, you get a person who knows who they are but has massive anxiety and a total inability to function in society.
That is the baseline architecture, yes.
Okay.
And this brings us to one of the most powerful overriding concepts in all of psychology. Because the brain cannot simply accept that these vital developmental steps were missed.
Right.
It spends the rest of the person's life trying to force them to happen. And this is called repetition compulsion.
Repetition compulsion. So this is basically how we spend our entire adult dating lives trying to fix our parents.
It is the unconscious drive to recreate the exact trauma of your childhood within your adult relationships.
Which sounds crazy when you say it out loud.
It does. But you unconsciously seek out partners who treat you similarly to how your parents treated you, with this desperate, secret hope that, well, this time you'll figure out how to master the situation.
This time you'll finally win their love.
Exactly.
I was actually trying to conceptualize how baffling this looks from the outside.
Yeah.
So imagine a little kid who gets a toy train for their birthday.
Okay.
But it's a defective toy. The wheels on the train are permanently jammed, and the kid spends hours pushing it, getting furious, crying because the train just won't roll down the track. It was like the great frustration of their childhood.
Right.
Then, 20 years later, that kid is an adult with their own money. They go to the toy store, but instead of buying a shiny new train that works perfectly,
They don't buy the new one.
no, they unconsciously dig through the bargain bin to find the exact same broken model with the jammed wheels.
Yes.
They bring it home, put it on the track, and are completely bewildered and enraged when it still doesn't roll.
Exactly. They are trying to fix the unfixable paths.
They just keep buying the broken train.
And the real tragedy of repetition compulsion is that the adult truly believes they are making free choices.
Yeah.
They don't realize they are just buying the broken train over and over.
Wow.
And this explains the exact mechanism of a narcissistic relationship. Because the narcissist suffered from a dead mother and never separated the ball of clay,
Right.
they spend their entire adult lives trying to turn their romantic partners into maternal figures.
Wait, really? Like they're dating people specifically to turn them into their mom.
Unconsciously, yes. They are searching for that total fusion, that unconditional symbiotic love they were denied as infants.
Cool.
So that once they finally achieve that fusion, they can then successfully pull the clay apart.
Yeah.
They basically use their adult partners to stage a reenactment of toddlerhood.
Oh my God. That perfectly maps onto the classic toxic narcissistic relationship cycle. Like everyone talks about the 3 phases online. Idealize, devalue, discard.
Yeah.
It's just a toddler trying to grow up. Think about it. In the idealize phase, they love bomb you. You are the perfect new mommy, the ultimate provider. They want to merge with you entirely.
That is the symbiosis phase.
Then inevitably, they enter the devalue phase. They start picking fights, criticizing you, pushing you away.
Yes.
That's them trying to separate the clay. It's literally a toddler throwing a tantrum, testing boundaries to see if they can survive independently.
Exactly right.
And finally, the discard phase. They abruptly leave you, often with terrifying coldness.
Because in their mind, they have successfully individuated. They have finally completed the developmental milestone.
So they leave you completely devastated and traumatized while they feel this brief surge of triumphant independence.
Until the emptiness sets in again. And then they have to go hunt for a new mother figure to start the whole cycle over.
They are completely trapped in a time loop. It's a 2-year-old's developmental drama being acted out by people in their 30s and 40s, and it's destroying real lives, real marriages, and real families in the process.
The collateral damage is immense.
It really is. And, this repetition compulsion applies to issues with the father just as much as the mother, which actually brings us to a topic I really want to dismantle today. I want to talk about daddy issues.
Ah, yes.
Because culturally speaking, daddy issues is used almost exclusively as a sexist slur.
It has been entirely co-opted as a cultural weapon against women.
Right. If a woman enjoys dressing provocatively, or if she dates men 10 years older than her, or if she's just emotionally volatile in a relationship, society immediately slaps the daddy issues label on her forehead to demean her.
Right.
It implies she is broken, crazy, and just acting out for attention.
It is a totally reductive, shaming tactic. But if we go back to the origins of psychoanalytic theory, all the way back to Sigmund Freud,
Yeah.
we uncover a massive revelation that completely upends this cultural stereotype.
What did he say?
Freud proposed that daddy issues are actually far more prevalent and often far more severe in men than in women.
Wait, the guy who essentially invented modern talk therapy said men have worse daddy issues.
Yes, he termed it the father complex.
Okay, wow.
To grasp this, we have to take a quick detour into how children develop between the ages of 3 and 5.
Right.
Freud outlined what he called the Oedipus complex for boys. In this stage, the young boy essentially falls into a primal, possessive love with his mother.
Right, okay.
And consequently, he begins to view his father as a terrifying, omnipotent rival for the mother's affection.
And Carl Jung later mirrored this for girls with the Electra complex, right?
Yeah.
Where the young girl becomes intensely fixated on her father and views her mother as the competition.
Exactly. And I know the terminology sounds archaic, but the underlying developmental observation is super solid.
Okay.
For a specific window of early childhood, kids become intensely competitively fixated on the opposite sex parent. It is a totally normal phase of testing boundaries and understanding family dynamics.
Right.
However, if the father is a dead father during this critical window, if he is emotionally remote, cruel, entirely absent, or wildly inappropriate, the child cannot resolve this phase.
They get stuck. The psychological gears just grind to a halt.
They become fixated, the conflict remains unresolved, and they basically carry that raw, gaping father wound directly into their adult lives.
So let's look at what this actually looks like in practice, outside of the cheap stereotypes. We look at women first. What does a woman with genuine, deeply rooted psychological daddy issues actually seek when she enters a romantic relationship?
She is compulsively seeking everything the dead father denied her.
Which is?
She's looking for absolute care, physical and financial protection,
Yeah.
constant approval, and complete adoration.
Okay.
But there is a much deeper, more subtle psychological mechanism at play here too. She is seeking what we call reality testing.
Reality testing. Okay, what does that actually look like when you're sitting across from someone at a dinner date?
Well, remember that the father's job was to be the socialization agent, the tour guide to the real world.
Right.
Because she was denied that healthy socialization, she does not trust her own perception of reality. She feels unmoored, constantly second-guessing her own judgments and instincts.
Yeah.
So she seeks out an older, authoritative male figure, and she essentially uses him as an anchor.
She outsources her perception to him.
Exactly. Whatever he believes, she adopts as absolute truth. Whatever his political leanings are, they just become hers.
Wow.
His values, his tastes in art, his judgments of other people, she swallows them whole because it provides her with an illusion of safety.
It's almost like she turns him into a cult leader and she is just a cult of one.
That's a great way to describe it.
She gladly surrenders her own autonomy and critical thinking because the anxiety of navigating the world alone is just too overwhelming.
The surrender of the self is the price she's willing to pay for feeling protected.
Okay, but I know some people listening are going to roll their eyes and say, come on, these young women dating rich, older guys don't care about reality testing. They're just gold diggers. They want the lifestyle.
Right, the financial critique.
Yeah. How do you clinically separate genuine daddy issues from straightforward financial opportunism?
It requires looking at the internal motivation. A classic gold digger, to use the colloquial term, has money issues.
Okay.
Their primary drive is material security, status, and luxury. The wealthy older man is simply the ATM.
Right.
The relationship is transactional. If the money dries up, they leave.
Right. They're out.
But a woman with severe daddy issues might also seek out a wealthy older man, and she might even demand money from him. But she views that money entirely differently.
How so?
To her, money is a love substitute.
So the money isn't about, like, buying designer bags to show off to her friends.
Not at its core, no. To her, the financial provision is tangible, quantifiable proof of care.
Oh, wow.
If he pays her rent, if he buys her groceries, it means he is actively protecting her. It means he is fulfilling the paternal role her actual father abandoned.
So the money is an emotional metric, not a material one.
Exactly. It is a desperate attempt to fill a profound psychological void.
You know, when you reframe it like that, it transforms from something society mocks into something incredibly tragic.
It is very tragic.
Okay, so what about men? If Freud argued that the father complex hits men harder, how does a grown man manifest daddy issues?
A man with an unresolved father complex is also seeking safety in a form of pampering. But his primary drive is to find an authority figure who can regulate his own grandiosity and anxiety.
Because he doesn't trust his own internal compass either. So
Right.
where does he look for that?
He often projects the father figure onto a boss, a spiritual guru, a military commander, or even a political leader.
Oh, interesting.
He becomes fiercely, sometimes irrationally devoted. He will be fawning, hyper-compliant, and just desperate to please this older, authoritative male.
So he's like a 45-year-old executive sitting in a boardroom making millions of dollars, but emotionally he's just a little boy trying to get his dad to look up from the newspaper and say, "Good job, son. I'm proud of you."
That is exactly what is happening. He will exhaust himself trying to earn the validation that was denied to him 3 decades prior.
Man.
And the danger is that if this surrogate father figure, the boss or the mentor, if he criticizes him, demotes him, or rejects him in any way,
The fallout is massive.
the emotional collapse isn't just professional disappointment. It is a catastrophic psychological regression. He experiences the original childhood abandonment all over again.
This totally highlights a concept in the research that absolutely fascinated me. It's the way people with these deep parental wounds process information and categorize people.
Yes.
It's a defense mechanism called splitting, or more specifically, self-splitting.
Splitting is a very primitive, very powerful defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And to truly understand it, we have to return to the cognitive limitations of the toddler brain.
Okay, so imagine a 2-year-old playing in their bedroom. They're trying to sort out their world.
Right.
In a toddler's mind, they do not have nuance. They only have 2 conceptual boxes to put things in.
Just 2.
Box A is bright gold and labeled like the greatest things ever in the history of the universe. And box B is black and labeled absolute garbage that must be destroyed.
Yes.
There is no box C for things that are okay, sometimes. There's just no middle ground.
Neurologically, a toddler's brain lacks the capacity to hold 2 conflicting concepts simultaneously. They literally cannot grasp ambivalence.
Okay.
For example, a healthy adult understands that the partner can be in a terrible mood and yell at them, but still fundamentally love them. A toddler cannot do that with their mother.
Right. When mommy is handing out cookies and smiling, she goes entirely into the greatest thing ever box. She is an angel. She is all good.
Yes.
But 5 minutes later, when mommy says it's time for a nap and takes the toy away.
The toddler's reality shifts entirely. Mommy is now entirely in the absolute garbage box.
Wow.
She's a monster. She is all bad. This is dichotomous black and white thinking.
So when a child suffers severe trauma, neglect, or a total failure to socialize from a dead mother or dead father, they get stuck in this cognitive phase.
They do.
They physically grow up, they get driver's licenses, they pay taxes, but they are still carrying those same 2 boxes into their adult relationships.
They apply splitting to everyone around them. And this is exactly why a narcissist or someone with borderline personality disorder swings so violently between idealizing you as their savior and then devaluing you as their worst enemy.
Because you switched boxes.
Exactly. But the most destructive aspect is when they apply these boxes to themselves. That is self-splitting.
And the sources provided a really visceral example of this regarding borderline personality disorder, which shares a massive amount of traumatic overlap with narcissism.
Yes, it does.
They described a scenario where a woman with BPD might view herself simultaneously as a pristine princess and a degraded whore.
Because she cannot integrate her own flaws, mistakes, or traumatic reactions into a cohesive, nuanced identity. So she literally slices her personality to pieces. She partitions her mind.
So she might go out, engage in highly destructive, reckless behavior like cheating on a loving partner, blowing her savings, just acting terribly.
Right.
But instead of waking up the next day and feeling the healthy guilt of, I am a good person who did a bad thing, she self-splits.
Yes.
She says, that wasn't the real me. That was the alcohol. That was my trauma acting up. My core self is pure and blameless.
She puts her destructive behavior into the garbage box, and she puts her core identity into the greatest thing ever box.
And builds a wall between them.
A massive wall. She refuses to acknowledge that both boxes belong to the exact same person.
It's like she's playing a video game and has different save files for her personality. When she messes up, she just unplugs the console and reloads the pristine save file, pretending the bad one doesn't even exist.
It is an extreme survival mechanism. If she were forced to integrate those destructive behaviors into her core identity, the resulting shame would absolutely annihilate her fragile ego.
So self-splitting keeps her psychologically alive in the moment?
It does, but it makes genuine accountability, growth, or even therapy incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
Because she will not claim ownership of her own shadow.
Okay, so we have established the foundational architecture of the clay, the house, the tour guide, and the toddler boxes.
Right.
Now, let's look at the actual environments that forge these daddy issues. What is actually happening in the childhood home? Because the research points out a massive paradox here.
A huge paradox. The paradox is that entirely opposite extremes of parenting can produce the exact same psychological pathology in the child.
Okay.
We can broadly categorize the environments that create daddy issues into two extremes: too close and too far.
Okay, let's examine the too close environment first. This is the archetypal daddy's girl. To the outside world, she looks incredibly lucky. She is put on a pedestal, showered with gifts. She is the golden child who can literally do no wrong. Why is this damaging?
It is damaging because the pedestal is a cage. What looks like extreme love is actually a profound boundary violation.
How so?
In psychoanalytic terms, this often veers into what we call emotional incest.
Emotional incest. Ugh, that phrase just makes the hair on my arm stand up.
It's deeply unsettling. It means the father is systematically using his young daughter to fulfill emotional needs that should be met by his adult wife or a peer.
He is crossing generational boundaries.
Exactly. He treats the child as his primary confidant. He might complain to her about her mother's flaws, effectively forcing the daughter to collude with him against her own mom.
Which is called parentification. The child is forced to act as the adult counselor.
Yes. The daughter is tasked with soothing his ego, managing his moods, and agreeing with his worldview. She is bribed with privileges and material goods, but the cost is her entire childhood.
She learns that her only value lies in gratifying an older man.
And she develops no internal boundaries because her father never respected them.
Wow. And then on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have the too far environment.
Right.
This is the father who is distant, rejecting, a deadbeat, or physically abusive. He provides absolute zero.
No validation, no physical affection, no guidance, and certainly no safe container for her emotions. Just a terrifying echoing void.
I was trying to conceptualize how the father who smothers his daughter with attention and the father who abandons his daughter entirely end up creating the exact same desperate adult.
It's hard to wrap your head around it.
Right. But think about watering a houseplant.
Okay, a very apt metaphor.
If you want a plant to thrive, it needs a specific, consistent, measured amount of water. That is a healthy father.
Right.
Now, the too close father is like a guy who hooks up a high-pressure fire hose to the kitchen sink and blasts the plant with water 24 hours a day. The soil floods, the roots rot, and the sheer physical force of the water just crushes the plant structure.
Yes.
The too far father takes that exact same species of plant and drops it in the middle of the Sahara Desert. No water, no shade, just relentless heat. The leaves crisp up, the roots shrivel, and it dies.
The mechanism of destruction is different, but the biological outcome is identical. Whether you blast the plant with a fire hose or abandon it in the desert, the structural integrity of the plant is obliterated. Psychologically, the child's boundaries are destroyed in both scenarios.
They both learn that love is not safe, moderate, or consistent.
They learn that love is extreme, overwhelming, deeply unstable, and fundamentally tied to suffering.
So they hit adulthood, and their internal water gauge is completely broken. They embark on this compulsive, insatiable pursuit of male attention to try and regulate themselves.
Right.
But here is where it gets really interesting, because common sense would dictate that someone starving for love would find one good person and cling to them like a life raft forever.
But that's not what happens.
No. Instead, we see the phenomenon of the intimacy cloud.
And this is a crucial distinction.
Yeah.
People with severe, unresolved parental wounds do not actually know how to tolerate true intimacy.
Why?
Because genuine intimacy requires vulnerability. It requires seeing your partner as an equal, and most terrifyingly, it requires accepting the risk of loss. For someone with a dead mother or father, true intimacy triggers every single alarm bell in their nervous system. It feels like impending annihilation.
So instead of going deep with one person, they do surface-level intimacy with a massive quantity of people.
They create an intimacy cloud.
Yeah.
They spread their emotional and sexual energy as thinly as possible across multiple partners.
They are terrified of being swallowed up by one person, but equally terrified of being totally abandoned.
So they hedge their bets. They rapid cycle through relationships, they chronically cheat, or they maintain a large orbit of exes and potential partners just lingering on the periphery.
Imagine you have 1 gallon of water. That gallon represents your total capacity for human intimacy.
Okay.
A healthy person takes that gallon of water and pours it straight down into one deep stone well. The water stays cool, it doesn't evaporate, and it sustains them for a lifetime.
Yes.
But a person with an intimacy cloud takes that exact same gallon of water and throws it in a wide arc across a massive hot asphalt parking lot.
It covers a huge amount of surface area, but it is millimeters thin.
And because the asphalt is hot, the water evaporates almost instantly.
Exactly.
To the outside observer, it looks like they have an incredibly active social and romantic life. They're always dating, always surrounded by people, but you can't drink from a wet parking lot.
No, the water is completely useless.
They are surrounded by partners, but internally, they are agonizingly, profoundly lonely.
And that unquenchable loneliness is the engine that drives them into highly toxic, chaotic relationship dynamics. To avoid sitting in silence with that emptiness, they lock themselves into what psychologists call the Cartman drama triangle.
Oh, the Cartman drama triangle is such a brilliant model. Let's map it out.
It maps out the dysfunctional roles people play in conflict. There are 3 points on the triangle.
Okay.
The abuser, which is sometimes called the persecutor, the victim, and the rescuer. But the critical misunderstanding people have is thinking these are static personality types.
They are not. The triangle is like a dizzying high-speed carousel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't just pick victim on day 1 of the relationship and stay there for 5 years. You are constantly rotating.
Okay, let's use the woman with daddy issues as an example.
She might enter a relationship with an older man playing the victim. She projects her trauma, casting him as the rescuer who will finally save her from her chaotic life.
But because he's a human being and not a god, he eventually fails to meet her impossible, idealized expectations. Like, he forgets to text back, or he just gets annoyed with her.
And the moment he fails, she violently rotates on the triangle. She flips into the abuser role.
Right.
She attacks him, devalues him, and punishes him for failing to be the perfect father. The man, completely whiplashed, suddenly finds himself thrust into the victim role.
And then what?
Then, when the conflict escalates and he threatens to leave her, the panic of abandonment sets in.
So she rotates again.
She immediately flips into the rescuer role, frantically apologizing, love-bombing him, and promising to fix everything.
It sounds absolutely exhausting. It's a full-time job of emotional chaos.
But the chaos is the entire point. Chaos is a highly effective tool to avoid the internal void.
Oh, wow.
If you are screaming at your partner, if you are locked in life or death emotional combat, you don't have to face your own unseparated, empty self. The adrenaline replaces the intimacy.
The sources made a point here that I found genuinely chilling. It's a provocative concept regarding how far this self-sabotage actually goes.
It is very dark.
They argued that for a young woman with severe daddy issues, partnering with a significantly older man in this toxic dynamic is quite literally a form of psychological self-harm. They equated it to physical cutting.
Yes, the parallels are quite striking. Self-mutilation, like cutting, serves 2 paradoxical functions for a deeply traumatized, dissociated person.
What are they?
First, the sharp, immediate physical pain acts as a focal point to drown out the overwhelming ambient emotional agony. It is distraction.
Right.
Second, for someone who feels entirely numb and detached from reality, the sight of blood and the rush of endorphins shock their nervous system. It makes them feel alive.
So how does dating a man 20 or 30 years older equate to a razor blade?
Because it is a guaranteed subconscious setup for abandonment and pain.
Hmm.
By anchoring her entire existence to a significantly older man, she is tying her life to someone who, by the simple biological laws of nature, is going to decline and die much sooner than she is.
Oh my God.
She is intentionally partnering with impending death.
That is incredibly dark. She is literally setting a time bomb on her own heart.
The extreme power imbalance, the inevitable physical decline of the partner, the guaranteed loss, it creates a constant agonizing hum of emotional intensity.
And that intensity functions exactly like the physical cut.
Yes, it drowns out her internal emptiness and makes her feel morbidly, tragically alive.
We are swimming in the deep end today, and it is heavy.
It is.
We've explored the emotional and structural dynamics of the narcissist and the father-wounded individual. But now we have to look at the physical manifestation of this trauma. We need to talk about narcissist sexuality.
Yes, this is a crucial component.
Because the way a narcissist approaches the bedroom is like the classic Madonna whore complex, but injected with absolute venom.
It is a profoundly distorted and disturbing landscape.
So to understand why a narcissist's sex life is so dysfunctional, we have to go back into their childhood home and examine the deeply conflicting, irreconcilable mixed signals they received regarding intimacy and bodies.
Exactly.
Set the scene for us. What does that mixed signal household actually look like to a developing child?
Imagine a child whose mother is subtly, covertly, emotionally incestuous. She treats the young child as a surrogate partner.
Okay.
She confides highly inappropriate adult secrets to them, she demands excessive physical closeness, and she reacts to the child's developing independence, not as a protective mother, but with the jealousy of a spurned lover.
So the mother is covertly sexualizing the child, using them to meet needs she isn't getting from her husband.
Exactly. Now, add the father to this equation. A father who is rigidly, aggressively conservative, perhaps highly religious or just deeply punitive regarding sexuality.
Right.
A father who preaches that sex is inherently dirty, sinful, and degrading. And that any woman who enjoys it is trash or a slut.
The cognitive dissonance for the child must be world-shattering.
It is.
I mean, if mom is subtly sexualizing me, does that mean mom is an evil, dirty sinner? Is she trying to infect me? But if mom is actually an angel, does that mean dad is a liar and I can't trust his authority?
Yes.
The two foundational pillars of their reality are at war.
And the child's developing brain simply cannot reconcile these two extremes. It is impossible.
So what happens?
The brain fractures the concepts. The child grows into an adult who literally cannot fuse the concept of emotional love with the concept of physical sex. They become fundamentally bifurcated.
Wow.
When they interact with women in adulthood, they categorize them strictly into one of two distinct roles.
The two categories, the Madonna and the whore.
Right. Category one is the maternal figure, the Madonna. They find a long-term partner, often a wife, who will cook for them, manage their calendar, do their laundry, and provide a stable home base.
And they love this woman.
They love this woman deeply, but in a highly dependent, childlike way.
But because they have unconsciously slotted this woman into the mother role, bringing sex into the equation feels psychologically incestuous.
Exactly. The incest taboo kicks in. They literally lose their physical attraction to their own wife because their brain says you cannot have sex with your mother.
So the marriage becomes completely, painfully sexless.
Yes, which leaves their biological sex drive entirely isolated in category two, the disposable woman, the whore.
Okay.
Because the father taught them that sex is dirty and only happens with degraded women, they seek out partners who they view as beneath them. Promiscuous women, sex workers, or highly submissive partners.
But the crucial thing to understand here is that the narcissist is not just seeking physical release. They are using the bedroom to enact the father's stern, punishing worldview.
Right. They enter the bedroom acting like the furious disciplinarian father. They verbally abuse the woman, they degrade her, they demand extreme kink or sadism, not as a fun way to connect, but as a weapon to punish her for being dirty.
It is an act of sadistic despoiling.
They do not want reciprocal sex. They want sadistic supply.
Yeah.
They need to humiliate the woman to assert their power and to constantly reaffirm the fractured reality their parents taught them.
Let me push back on this because it seems so overly complicated.
Okay.
If a narcissist just wants to use a woman as an object and doesn't care about emotional intimacy, why go through the charade of dating? Why not just have casual sex? You know, go to a bar, hook up, leave before breakfast.
Because casual sex, paradoxically, actually requires a high degree of equality and mutual investment.
Wait, really? A one-night stand requires investment.
Think about the mechanics of it. Even for a brief encounter at a bar, you have to buy a drink, you have to make polite conversation, you have to pretend, even for 20 minutes, that you care about the other person's thoughts.
Okay, true.
You have to treat them as an autonomous equal. And most importantly, you have to negotiate a mutually agreeable sexual encounter.
Oh, I see. A random woman at a bar is highly unlikely to consent to the extreme, degrading, humiliating treatment the narcissist requires to get aroused. She'll just throw her drink in his face and leave.
Precisely. To a narcissist, the polite negotiation of casual sex feels like a humiliating waste of resources.
Wow.
They despise treating a partner as an equal. They do not want an equal partner to share an experience with. They want a submissive object to dismantle.
The analogy that slammed into my mind while reading this is a child who gets a brand new, intricate toy radio for his birthday.
Okay.
A normal, healthy child turns the radio on, tunes the dial, and enjoys the music.
Right.
The narcissist gets the radio, grabs a hammer, and immediately smashes it to pieces. They rip out the wires and crush the speaker.
Yes.
They don't want to enjoy the music. They want the rush of power that comes from destroying a complex machine.
That is a chilling, perfect description of sadistic despoiling. They view a vibrant, complex partner as a machine to be broken down.
So how does this actually play out in real time when a woman gets trapped in a relationship with a narcissistic man?
The sources broke this down into a 4-stage life cycle, and it plays out like a psychological horror movie. The progression is highly predictable.
What's the first stage?
Phase 1 is what Vaknin refers to as malignant optimism.
Malignant optimism. So the woman meets the narcissist. Initially, he love bombs her to hook her, but very quickly he introduces his dark, sadistic sexual demands into the bedroom. Why doesn't she run?
Because of her optimism. She convinces herself that this is just a phase. She thinks he's just exploring, he has some trauma. If I indulge his kinks, if I submit and prove that my love is unconditional, he will eventually feel safe enough to drop the act.
She thinks he will eventually settle down into normal, loving intimacy.
Yes. She literally thinks she could love the sickness out of him by being the perfect compliant object.
And paradoxically, her total submission causes the narcissist to bond with her.
It does. He thinks, this is incredible. She obeys my most twisted commands without question. She is the perfect submissive object. He becomes deeply attached to her obedience.
But human beings aren't objects, so eventually we hit phase 2.
Demanding intimacy.
Right. A year or two passes, the woman is exhausted, she is spiritually depleted by the degradation, the rough treatment, the lack of eye contact. She finally draws a boundary.
Yeah.
She says, I have proven my loyalty, now I just want you to hold me. I want normal, missionary, loving sex where we look each other in the eye as equal.
She is demanding that he treat her like a human being instead of a toy radio.
And how does the narcissist process this demand?
With absolute fury. To the narcissist, her demand for equality feels like a massive, treacherous bait and switch. He feels profoundly betrayed.
Which leads instantly into phase 3, the chill.
Yes. Without the element of sadism, degradation, and total control, the narcissist's arousal completely flatlines. He literally cannot get sexually excited by love and equality. He often develops instantaneous erectile dysfunction. He withdraws entirely from the bedroom, punishes her with stony silence, and the relationship becomes a freezing emotional and physical desert.
Because if he can't be the punishing father or the kid smashing the radio, he has no software to run in the bedroom. He just ceases to function.
Exactly. So the romantic relationship effectively dies.
Which brings us to phase 4, which is terrifying because it refuses to end. Phase 4 is the stalker phase.
Yes. The romantic relationship fractures. The woman might pack her bags and leave, or she might seek affection elsewhere because she is literally starving.
Right.
The narcissist has completely withdrawn sexually. He has no physical interest in her anymore.
Yeah.
But, and this is the crux of the pathology, he remains intensely, ferociously attached to her maternal qualities.
Because he split her in his head.
Exactly.
He hates the sexual part of her that demanded equality, but his inner toddler is still terrified of losing his mommy.
Exactly. She is the one who anchors his life. She organizes his reality. He absolutely refuses to let her go.
So he transitions from a distant partner into a highly possessive, controlling, paranoid stalker.
Yes. He will not sleep with her. He will not love her. But he will dedicate his life to destroying anyone else who tries to.
It is a complete, airtight psychological prison for both of them.
It really is.
Okay, I need to take a deep breath here. We have covered an immense amount of heavy ground.
We have.
We started with the mother failing to pull the clay apart, the father failing to act as a tour guide, the extremes of the fire hose in the desert creating daddy issues, and the horrific smashing of the toy radio in the bedroom.
We have mapped out the baseline pathology of the narcissist.
But now we're entering the final, most detailed part of our deep dive. Because while the mother creates the raw, unformed baseline of narcissism in those first 3 years, it is the father who steps in later and sculpts that raw material.
Yes. The father acts as the forge. He determines exactly what specific flavor or subtype of narcissist this damaged child will grow up to be.
The sources outline 11 specific archetypes of dysfunctional fathers. We are going to walk through every single one of them.
This is where a lot of things will click for people.
Yeah, this is where listeners might experience some intense light bulb moments regarding their own parents, their terrible bosses, or their toxic exes.
Absolutely.
Let's group them conceptually so we don't get lost. Let's start with the first group, the ghosts. These are the fathers defined entirely by their absence, their failure, or their inconsistency.
Right. The first in this category is the dead or collapsed father.
Okay.
And we aren't talking about physical death. We are talking about a man who is a complete failure in life and has simply surrendered. He is a loser in the eyes of society and his family.
He provides no model of success, no masculine strength, and no protective shield against the world.
Exactly.
Imagine being a 5-year-old kid. The world is huge and scary. You come home, and your dad is just slumped on the couch, defeated by his job, defeated by his wife, defeated by life.
You realize instantly the guy who is supposed to protect me can't even protect himself.
Man, so what happens to the kid?
The child internalizes a profound separation insecurity. They learn that the world is a crushing, insurmountable place. Because they have no strong internal model to rely on, they grow into adults who are incredibly clingy and dependent.
They constantly outsource their survival to others.
Yes, spouses, institutions, governments, because their primary model of survival was total collapse.
Next in the ghost group is the shameful father. This is a step beyond just being a loser. This is the town drunk, the petty criminal, the guy who makes a fool of himself at the school play.
And this is deeply toxic because it introduces the element of public humiliation. The child feels an overwhelming, annihilating sense of shame simply by association.
And we must remember, at its absolute core, pathological narcissism is a defense mechanism built to repel shame.
Exactly.
So the kid is burning with embarrassment every time their dad's name is mentioned. To survive this, they build a massive, impenetrable fortress of a false self. They grow up driven to be the grandiose narcissist. They have to be the CEO. They have to wear the bespoke suits. They have to demand perfection from everyone around them.
Right.
Their entire life is a frantic performance to prove to the world, I am absolutely nothing like that shameful man who raised me.
Precisely. Their grandiosity is in direct proportion to the depth of the shame they are running from.
Okay. Who is the third ghost father?
The third is the intermittent father. This is the hot and cold dad. One day he brings you a present and calls you his buddy. The next day he screams at you for dropping a spoon.
Wow.
One weekend he promises to take you fishing. The next weekend he disappears to a bar.
It sounds maddening. It's like a lab rat pushing a lever on a slot machine where the rules of the game change every 5 minutes.
And that random reinforcement is what shatters the psyche.
How so?
A child builds a cohesive self-image by looking into the mirror of their parents' consistent reactions. If the father's reactions are entirely random, the mirror is shattered. The child cannot figure out if they are good or bad, worthy or worthless.
So how does that broken mirror manifest in a 40-year-old adult?
Because they possess absolutely no internal stabilization, this type of narcissist must constantly outsource their self-worth to a hive mind.
A hive mind.
Yes, they become obsessed with social media metrics, public opinion, and the constant real-time feedback of an audience. They literally need other people to tell them who they are on a daily basis because the intermittent father denied them the ability to know themselves.
Wow. Okay, that's the ghost group. Let's move to the second group, the tyrants.
Right.
These are not absent. They are actively, aggressively abusive. First is the harsh, critical father.
This father is impossible to please. His standards are astronomical and ever-shifting. If the child comes home with a 99 on a math test, the father does not say good job. He demands to know where the missing point is. He is always the bigger victim, always the superior intellect, always the harsher critic. He usually masks this abuse under the guise of building character or tough love.
So the child is running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up until they collapse. They can never, ever win. What kind of monster does this breed?
Interestingly, it often breeds what we call the covert or inverted narcissist.
Really?
Yes. Because the child was so systematically crushed by the critical father, they do not develop the loud, booming grandiosity of a stereotypical narcissist. Instead, their narcissism turns inward. They become professional victims.
They control people from the bottom instead of the top.
Exactly. They are hypersensitive, people-pleasing, and chronically aggrieved. They use their suffering as a weapon of emotional blackmail.
They say to their partners, look at how much I hurt, look at how fragile I am, you owe me your complete devotion because the world is so mean to me.
Yes, it is a covert grandiosity based on being the most wounded person in the room.
That brings us to the second tyrant, the sadistic father.
Unlike the harsh father, who at least pretends his cruelty serves a moral purpose, the sadistic father just intrinsically enjoys inflicting pain.
He creates total, terrifying chaos in the home.
He will intentionally punish the child for doing a good deed and then reward them for acting viciously.
He intentionally breaks the child's understanding of cause and effect. That is pure, unadulterated evil.
And it is the forge that creates pure evil in return. This environment breeds the psychopathic or malignant narcissist.
Wow.
The child learns very early that concepts like justice, fairness, and empathy are lies for weak people. They learn that there are no rules in the world, only power.
So they learn to enjoy inflicting suffering on others because that was the only way they ever saw power successfully exercised in their childhood home.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move to the third group, which I found the most psychologically twisted, the role reversers.
Yes, these are complex.
These are the fathers who force the child to do the heavy emotional lifting. First up is the parentifying father.
This father acts like a helpless, needy, dysregulated infant. He abdicates his adult responsibilities entirely. He forces the child to take care of him, to manage his temper tantrums, to balance the checkbook, to mediate his fights with his wife.
It's a 10-year-old child cooking dinner, doing the laundry, and talking their 50-year-old dad off an emotional ledge every single night.
And because a child is fundamentally, neurologically incapable of successfully parenting a grown adult, the child is in a perpetual state of failure. They can never actually fix their dad.
So they carry a deep, rotting core belief that they are never good enough.
Oh, yes.
So how does a child who feels never good enough act when they grow up?
They project it outward. They become the hypermoralistic, perfectionistic, deeply punitive narcissist.
They become the president of the homeowners association who walks around with a ruler measuring people's grass, writing fines for trash cans left out 5 minutes too late.
Yes, they are incredibly rigid. They punish everyone around them for the slightest infractions because they are desperately trying to control the external world to soothe their internal feeling of inadequacy.
The second role reverser is the instrumentalizing father. I mentioned the show dog analogy earlier. This is the dad who uses his kids strictly as a prop for his own ego.
Yes, he is a narcissist himself. In public, he loudly brags about the child to the neighbors, the coaches, and the extended family. My son, the prodigy, my daughter, the Olympian.
He extracts narcissistic supply from the child's achievements.
But the moment the front door closes and they're in private, he ignores the child, belittles them, or abuses them.
The mixed signals here are dizzying. The kid is sitting in their bedroom thinking, am I the genius the neighbors see, or am I the piece of garbage my dad treats me like in the kitchen? Who actually am I?
And this creates a severe identity disturbance. The child never coalesces a solid central identity. They become ultimate chameleons, shape-shifting their personality depending on who is in the room just to survive.
And this profound lack of a core self is a hallmark of both narcissism and borderline personality disorder.
Exactly. The third father in this group is the dysregulated father.
This is the highly moody, volatile father.
Yes. He might be struggling with bipolar disorder, untreated borderline personality, or severe substance abuse. His massive, unpredictable emotions flood the entire house, sucking up all the oxygen.
So the child spends every waking moment walking on eggshells, trying to manage the father's moods, cracking jokes to make him smile, just desperately trying to keep the peace so the house doesn't explode.
And this breeds a very specific delusion in the child. Magical thinking.
Magical thinking.
Because the child occasionally succeeds in making dad smile, they actually begin to believe, I have the power to cure my father's mental illness. If I am just good enough, I can fix him.
And they carry that exact God complex into adulthood.
Yes.
They seek out broken, toxic romantic partners because they genuinely believe their love has the magical power to fix or destroy the people around them.
Precisely. They overestimate their own emotional omnipotence.
Now, we arrive at our final group, Group 4,
Okay,
the delusional and submissive fathers. First is the fantasy-prone father.
right.
Now, on the surface, a dad who plays make-believe sounds kind of sweet, but the research paints a very dark picture here.
It is deeply insidious.
Yeah.
This is a father who has completely failed in the real world. He can't hold a job, he has no friends, he has no status.
So he just retreats.
Yes. Instead of facing reality, he retreats into an elaborate daydream world. He builds paracosms, delusions of grandeur, conspiracy theories, or obsessive fantasies, and he drags the child into that shared delusion.
He sits the kid down and says, "It's you and me against the world, kid. Everyone else is stupid. The government is out to get us. The neighbors are idiots, but we are the secret geniuses."
The father teaches the child that reality is painful and should be entirely avoided. The child grows up to be a narcissist who can only interact with romantic partners by dragging them into a shared fantasy.
Oh, wow.
If you date this person, they will hand you a script. If you don't play your assigned role in their movie, they will rage at you because they have absolutely no idea how to relate to a real human being in the real world.
Next is the antisocial father, the literal criminal, the rule breaker, the aggressively entitled man.
He explicitly teaches the child that society is the enemy. He teaches them that laws are for suckers, empathy is a fatal weakness, and taking advantage of others is the only way to survive.
And this environment reliably breeds a highly entitled, antisocial narcissist who operates purely on domination, completely devoid of any moral constraint or guilt.
Yes, exactly.
And finally, the 11th archetype, the submissive or codependent father, the ultimate doormat.
This father is usually married to a highly dominant, terrifying, toxic mother. Instead of protecting the child from her, the father models absolute submission.
He gives up his agency, his spine, and his voice entirely just to survive his wife's wrath.
So the child watches this dynamic every day and realizes they only have two choices in life. Be the pathetic doormat being stepped on, or be the terrifying monster doing the stepping.
It is a totally binary trap. They learn that equality does not exist.
They will either emulate the submissive father and become a covert, victim-playing narcissist, or they will emulate the dominant mother and become an overt, psychopathic narcissist. There is no middle ground.
It is incredible how specific the damage is based on the father's exact behavior.
It really is.
And I should note, for you listening, the sources did briefly detail a 12th type, the literally incestuous father, but noted that this specific horrific trauma typically shatters the psyche into borderline personality disorder or dissociative identity disorder rather than pure narcissism, so it falls slightly outside our specific scope today.
The mechanism of fragmentation is slightly different, yes, but the overarching truth remains absolute. The mother leaves behind raw, unseparated, damaged material, and the father takes that material and tempers it in his own specific fire.
We have covered an immense landscape today. We've explored the ball of clay failing to separate, the building inspector failing to give a tour of the neighborhood, the fire hose in the desert creating the same dead plant, the gallon of water evaporating on the asphalt, the sadistic smashing of the toy radio in the bedroom, and the specific fires of the 11 fathers.
We really have.
So when we zoom all the way out, what does this all mean for us?
It means that a terrifying amount of what we proudly consider our personality, our relationship to intimacy, our knee-jerk reaction to authority figures, our deepest, most private desires in the bedroom, is often not truly ours.
We are just biological computers running the corrupted software that was programmed into us by our caregivers.
Yes.
We are stuck in repetition compulsion, playing out old, desperate scripts, trying to get a different ending to a movie that was filmed when we were 3 years old.
It is a profoundly sobering realization. But it is also the key to liberation.
Yes. Because for you listening, understanding these dense psychoanalytic concepts isn't about calling up your parents tomorrow and screaming at them for everything wrong in your life.
No, not at all.
It's about recognizing the water you are currently swimming in. Once you can identify the Cartman drama triangle, you can actively choose to step off the carousel.
Exactly.
Once you recognize that you are spraying your water on a parking lot, you can choose to do the terrifying work of digging a well. It gives you the power of reality testing for yourself.
Knowledge is the only weapon against repetition compulsion. You cannot fix a machine until you fully understand how it was wired in the first place.
Exactly. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final lingering thought based on everything we've uncovered today.
Okay, consider this. If our defense mechanisms, our frantic choice in partners, our deepest fears, our anxieties, and even our most primal sexual desires are merely reactions,
Yeah.
if they are just echoes of the specific ways our mothers and fathers failed us,
At what point in our lives, if ever, do we actually become ourselves?
it is the ultimate enduring question of the human condition.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the architecture of the mind. Take care of yourselves, take care of your inner child, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.